welcome to the show. Today, we are going to delve into a fascinating intersection that we're going to talk about. It is to look at technology-driven design and human experience-driven design. It's quite fascinating. We have been in this debate for a while, but the idea to do that today is to dig deeper and get a little more insightful. To do this and to join me today is a very special guest we have. So she studied to be an architect and in the process discovered and was, I can say, pleasantly surprised to discover the world of design, the world of UX and product. And that's when she realized that she wants to transition. Since then, she has also spent time designing for both consumer segments and enterprise. She currently creates awesome experiences at Grow. And when she's not designing, she spends her time doodling and also illustrating. So by now we know that we're talking to a super creative person here on the show. So I think with that note, I'd like to welcome Shreya. Hi, Shreya. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Vinny. Thank you for that introduction and thank you for having me on the show.
Great. My pleasure. So Shreya, I think it's an interesting topic that we've picked today. But I think before we move into the nitty-gritties of it, let's define what that is for our users, right? What do we mean when we say technology-driven design? And what do we mean when we say human-centered design? Do you want to, shed light on your basic understanding?
Right. So I think as the names themselves suggest, when the approach to solving a design pivots or prioritizes the systems and the technology that actually enables it, then it becomes a very technology centric approach to design. This focuses on maximizing the abilities of what you can achieve by means of technology. Whereas if the approach recognizes and understands the needs, the emotions, and the kind of reactions and responses of the person actually using this technology or product, then it becomes a human-centric approach to design. And I think process-wise, a tech-centered approach is a lot more directional and systematic, because you will never downgrade or take a step back in the kind of technology you're building. You're always upgrading and adding layers to it. But I think in a human-centric approach, things are slightly different, because people are different, situations and contexts are different, and how people are reacting and responding in these contexts are different. And when this becomes your priority, you're going to have to constantly move backward and forward to navigate through your process and while solving a certain problem space. So I think that probably is the largest dividing line of the two.
Absolutely. And I think you put it very nicely that something on the first part, right, when we focused on what technology driven is, and that would also help us get onto the next segment. I think it's safe to say now that we live in a very, very tech driven world. 2024 is that, and we are only going to rise from here. And I believe every day the focus is more on, how do we solve or how do we compete for everyone, like all of us, to be relevant in the technological space, right? How do we innovate and solve more problems? And there is also, a narrative which says that, by doing all of this, there is a need to stay ahead in the market. Like you said, right? We always move forward with tech. We, barely go back. So what would you say are some of your thoughts when we talk about pushing technological boundaries when we are designing, for like any experiences that come to us?
Today, I think it's safe to say that almost 80% of the products we use in our day-to-day life are backed by some or the other kind of technology. So it's not something that's new to people anymore. And that being said, I think when we look at the kind of products that we use, there are certain set of products that or tech that we're building that is enabling us to automate or optimize an existing process that was otherwise done, say, manually. But then there's also another side of technology that's allowing you to push beyond your existing boundaries and maybe look at possibilities that have never even been seen or thought of before. And that's where I think recognizing the power of what tech can do for you becomes really important. For example, I think if we look at, say, shopping, um, technology has enabled it at a certain level to move from the malls to, say, an online medium. Uh, but with time, there's a whole new level of tech that also allows this same shopping experience, where now you can maybe try products on in a virtual environment by means of, say, AR, VR, or immersive design. And this has taken the experience to a whole new level. So while I think moving online at the first step helped people access a lot more brands and products from the comfort of their homes, it probably wasn't enough because there was a sense of personal touch and that level of experience that was missing, which came into play when you leveraged the power of technology to kind of push beyond what you already see and know of and turn a very highly speculative idea into reality. So I think it becomes important to recognize that. And like you said, uh, your work can become irrelevant or redundant very quickly if you don't keep up with that pace. And I think in general, people today are a lot more receptive to trying new things and using new tech as well. So as designers, it becomes important to keep up with that pace.
I agree with you. And I think one aspect of a designer is to also not look at solutions with our own bias. That happens to us a lot. I feel that we create something, we're super happy about it, but do we really stop at that? Do we stop at that saying that, we've created the best? And maybe to re-quote, what you said, the transition from malls to, online shopping experience was amazing. But there was someone out there who thought about humanizing it a bit more, right? Where you can virtually maybe try an outfit, maybe try a pair of glasses, right? And that's exactly the push that we are talking about. We see that getting welcomed by a large set of users. I would maybe safely assume that we are, heading towards. Now, while we speak about this, and there's no denying that there's a lot we have done, there's a lot we have innovated. We are starting 2024 with, a lot of these ideas in the innovation space, and we get to see more and more of this coming in as we progress, I'm sure. But there is also a flip side to this narrative, right? Which sometimes basically comes out as a debate that are we, in the process of innovating, in the process of being very, very tech driven, somehow losing focus on the fact that the basic needs of any user that we are designing for is sometimes overlooked. That's a running narrative, a debate, I would say. I don't think it has any right or wrong answers, but I think it's interesting to talk about it. And to that, I think I'd like to share something that I read recently on the web. Now this gentleman is talking about this lady who sells flowers on the street, okay? And he goes to buy from her and he observes that there's a QR code stuck to a tree next to her little stall of flowers. Now, the first thing that he says to this lady is, "Ma'am, I'm amazed at the fact that you're using this and going cashless." Of course, translating this into the human way of her understanding the whole transition. To which there comes a surprising reply where the lady says that, this is good, but this QR code is actually linked to my son's bank account that I don't have access to. So every day I make a lot of money, but I can't instantly access without seeking help. I would rather go back 5 years and get the cash in my bag and go back home and, go by my day buying the stuff that I need for the day. And that I think it was a piece of article and a little more elaborated that got me thinking, right? Um, do you think we somehow missed a persona of sorts here, or um, maybe was it a result of again overlooking a certain set of users, or basically having the expectation to sort of educate and move and help them basically enable this for them, which will bring us to the next segment. So how would you, say this experience changed?
Most definitely, I think the example you just stated was a really valid point that speaks for the fact that there's a very fine line between innovation being impressive uh, versus innovation becoming alien. Because technology today is advancing at a pace faster than people can even adapt to it. It's important to understand that you can't expect your user or people to have to keep learning and unlearning at that pace. And at the end of the day, however impressive or advanced a tech might be, you're still solving for a person, for a very human experience. And that's where it becomes important to bring in the idea of HCD or human centered design. And I think that's where the constant debate also stems out of. Um, and it's essential to understand that while we're creating tech that's great, it's as important to understand how you expose a person to this piece of technology, because you can't just give someone a new piece of tech and expect them to use it or like it. I think that's where the play becomes really important, where you're constantly tying back to if your technology is actually solving the needs of your user and is actually usable, because otherwise it's as good as a coffee mug without a handle, right?
Absolutely. I think this is where we shift gears, right? This is where we understand um, one thing cannot run in silo. And the highest purpose for us as designers is to design for users, right? And I think another example that I recently discovered, and this was part of something I was working on, where there was a particular screen that we were working on, and we interviewed a bunch of people, a bunch of end users, active users of that particular application. Now, one set of users said that, hey, you know what, we need like a refresh on this. The experiences are quite fragmented. And it would help if we, got something better that would help us navigate our actions, our everyday actions in a, much more organized way. While this was one side, there was another side of users that also said, you know what, I won't like anything to be changed. I've been on this platform for 10 years now. It's like second nature to me. It's my reflex that I come to it and do what I have to do in a day. I mean, there is a consideration that there is a sense of familiarity that grows on users. And when we are trying to change, we have to tread carefully, right? Um, how do we do that? Like basically, how do we maintain that while giving it a very human experience? Or if you have come across any of such experiences yourself.
Right. I think, like you said, right, in the example you mentioned itself, uh, it's not always necessary that the technology that is powering innovation is doing good for you. There are some experiences that demand this, but like you said, in the case of your second user who said that he or she is familiar with the certain things, there are some experiences that purely rely on the aspect of comfort, trust, and this familiarity. And in this case, it becomes important to draw the line about how much is too much, right? When we're talking about tech and innovation. And that's when you start placing uh, the sentiments and the needs of your user first, which is why I said in a human centric approach, there's a constant need to go backward and forward, because people are changing. In the same context, people react differently. Um, and I think even when we talk about, say, technology versus a human centric approach in design, we often only talk about the glamorous side of technology and all that it brings with it. But there's an equally existent and opposite side of tech, which is when tech fails, and when it could be a network error, a system failure, it could be anything. And that's when tech alone fails to do its job, and a human-centric approach allows you to navigate through these situations very elegantly, because uh, you are not defining the direction of the experience, but you're doing it in tandem with how your user is reacting to it across situations, across contexts. So it's a lot more holistic, fluid, and responsive in that way.
Absolutely. And I think that very thought brings us to our next segment, which is the balancing act, right? We have spoken about this, and you said this, that there is a substantial amount of back and forth that we do, which I'd like to say in fancy words we call as an iterative process, right? I think that way we have evolved. We have sort of taken the bits and bobs coming from users into consideration, and I can maybe say that in the last few years, acknowledged this need to go back and forth, to juggle between what could work, what could not work, and then pass it on, as part of the next phase. So how do we ensure this balancing act is consistently done and not overlooked? How do we make sure that if a user that I just spoke about has trouble, gets enough time to be educated, right? We give enough time, we give all our ears to listen to this side of the users as well, and not be one-sided, when we try to design for a solution. How does the balancing act work, in your opinion?
In this constant debate of the two approaches and the terms that we're using as designers, as creators, if we were probably discussing this maybe a few decades ago, the understanding would be a lot more different, because they were seen as two mutually exclusive processes, which is not true today. And I think more and more people have started to realize that with time. And when I today see more, I see this as a case where one becomes the enabler of another. Like they say, every circle can have just one center, and here there's two terms trying to both fight for the word centric, right? Which is where maybe I start to think of it today in a slightly different way, where we can maybe say something around the lines of a human-centric process, but a tech-powered approach to design. Where I think when I also look at technology, there's, like you said, there's this constant debate about are we neglecting the use of the needs and the wants of the user in the process of trying to leverage technology to kind of create innovation in product and business. But when I think about this, I don't see technology as only a means to innovate or drive product and business. I also see it as a way to drive design thinking, because if as a designer one is able to recognize and understand the capabilities of what it can do for you, your design process and thinking itself starts at a step where you're saying almost anything is possible, right? So it helps you develop a highly imaginative mindset that allows you to think beyond your existing world. And that's where, as designers, I think we should be able to use the power of tech to see what we can do more. But that being said, however tech savvy a person might be, or with time people are becoming more and more comfortable with tech, I do believe that there's a fundamental difference in the way the human world and the digital world works, right? So I was recently reading something again that spoke about how even when you think of very abstract concepts, right, like when you're referring to a friend, you say things like my inner circle of friends or my close friend, even if they're not physically close to you, or if they're sitting in another continent, you still use words like close or inner circle, because you're naturally used to developing a stronger connection to something that is nearer to you in the physical world. So by natural order, the human mind is used to referring and relating things that are a lot more finite and tangible from your real world. Whereas the kind of experiences you're thrown into the digital world are a lot more different because it's a lot more infinite. You're interacting with a very two-dimensional and intangible kind of space. So that's when it becomes important to understand how you're tying the two, so that you're constantly thinking of, while you are creating experiences in a digital world, you're constantly thinking of how your human is actually perceiving this experience, because the experience that tech is enabling is a lot different from how the person is experiencing that experience in itself. So I think the balance is to try and understand how the person is going to think about things, feel about things, and draw the line there where you tie you tie up with the kind of possibilities that tech brings with you, the advancements that it can do for you, but at the same time you're questioning at all times if it's actually doing its job, or how are you actually exposing or introducing this to your user. So I think that's where the role of a designer comes in, where you're questioning at each step if what you're creating with technology is actually answering the needs of your human or not, which is where I say it comes into striking a balance between the two, where the core of the problem still revolves around your human and the needs of them, but you're using tech to empower this. And it's a continuous cycle in that way.
Absolutely. And great insights there. I love the example that you shared. Do you think, I mean, I'm just adding to your thought here. Do you think we can enable this by getting more into a collaborative space? Like there is need for collaboration now more than ever, right? And sometimes this balance is not possible when we design in silos. It can get very hard for some designers because we fairly start small as part of smaller teams, and we grow in a usual journey that we could see, and this is just an average experience. But what I feel, and I think like in my experiences in the past as well, collaboration really fuels balance. When we talk cross-functionally, when we talk about a problem from not just our perspective, also from the perspective of people in the product space, people who have been developing these experiences, right? What are some things they can and can't do? What are some things both of us in tandem have to push to achieve what we want to do? This certainly collaboration does that, right? I feel that helps us balance the boat in the middle of the ocean and sort of sail through. Would you agree?
Yeah, most definitely. I think as designers, I think we're often working with, like you said, a very cross-functional team. We're also working across cross-functional products and domains. And I think when you talk about the people who are actually developing or building this technology, there's a very engineered and systematic way of thinking about things, because you're talking 0, 1, and you're building in that sense. But when the processes and ideas become a lot more collaborative, I think there's an exchange of the more human side to things, which also come into place, and that will help kind of achieve a deeper and stronger understanding between the technical sides and the emotional side of creating anything.
Absolutely. I think with that, it's safe to say that we've established that there is a balancing act and we have to consistently pursue it. One can't function without the other. And human experiences and getting to know our users is the highest purpose that we are solving for. But with the help of technological advancement and the year that we are in, right? Great. I think with that, we've closed out on this conversation. We spoke about some lovely things. We discussed on, firstly, we defined it for our users, what the two things are. We discussed on how technology can drive the world today. What is also the flip side of it, and how and where do human experiences come in. And I can say that we concluded that it is a balancing act, right? After all. So thank you so much, Shreya. This has been super, super insightful. I know that we took quite a bit to reach to this day and do this, but excited to have done it, and looking forward to hear more from you. Have you again here and talk about many other interesting things in design. Thank you so much for your time today. Before we leave, I'd like maybe for us to take a quick virtual selfie, if I may call it, where I can maybe just take a screenshot of us in 3, 2, and 1. All right. With that, we wrap our show. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more stuff on design and the product space. Thank you, Shreya. Thank you for your time today. Bye.